This is really about being free to create what you want your life to look like. We each are our own hero. And how do we take the challenges that come our way and see those as the birth process of us becoming heroic? Can you meet that judgment that ultimately will surface with neutrality?
This is the Wall Street Coach Podcast with Kim Ann Curtin.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Wall Street Coach Podcast with me, Kim Ann Curtin, and Lucas Peterson. Thank you for coming and watching another podcast. This is our 10th podcast, so I'm pretty excited about that. And seems like we have some steady viewers, so that's exciting. Please let us know in the comments if you want us to address a specific topic. But today we're going to talk about really just the end of 2020 and the new incoming year, because we figure by the time this gets up, it'll be right at that cusp between Christmas and New Year's. So we want to talk about kind of the intentions, perhaps, that you want to create for yourself as you go into a new year. I'm not the biggest fan of New Year's resolutions, but I am a fan of intentions. So New Year's intentions. So we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to have an intention over a resolution. And we're going to talk about a little bit the upward spiral versus the downward spiral and how those two perspectives can really have a huge impact on your life. So hello, Lucas. How are you doing today?
Hi, Kim. I am doing well.
Okay.
We didn't chat about too much about this before, but I love that you like intentions instead of resolutions, because I feel the same way. I've never loved the idea of New Year's resolutions.
Wow.
For a few reasons. One is just because I feel like there's too much pressure that you put on yourself with what it is, and so I like your intention there. And the other part that I don't love about New Year's resolutions is the fact that it's like you have to wait for a new year. Like that I see the turning of the page, but I also don't love that idea. It's like every day, every moment we have the opportunity to like become new, to be born again. And it's just a shift in your mindset. So
I'm with you. Totally with you. That's so great. I'm glad. I think that's why we work well together, Lucas. We have kind of a similar philosophy of how we kind of look through the prism at life. And, ironically, one of the True Trader webinars I did recently, we had a trader who was trying to understand the difference. He specifically asked about expectation versus intention. And he was really trying to, get clarity around like, I was saying you don't want to have expectations, you want to have intentions. And that's, what I'm thinking of now is the same idea. A resolution is in a way an expectation. And I do think that that internal pressure or external pressure that comes with that leads one down a dark path in the end. If you have a lot of unresolved gremlins or inner saboteurs that you haven't wrestled with, because they're going to make you feel lousy about yourself if you don't reach the goal.
Yeah. I think that's a good point as well, because I think it's more goal oriented as opposed to process oriented is what I like to think of things.
That's great.
Especially with I feel like when you focus on the process, you're able to apply more discipline to it, and also like give yourself a little bit of slack if you miss out on it. Where I feel like that's why a lot of people fail at resolutions, is because they're like, I'm going to do this every day. They miss a day and they're like, well, it's over. As opposed to just like if you have the intention, you're like, I'm going to do this every day. You miss a day. You're like, I still have the intention. The resolution, there was no, goal or like, so it's just the process.
That's it. That's exactly it. And the process is the place where really the job gets done. And the process isn't, I don't think it's just the place where most people sit, because it is the work side of it. It is the place of being strategic, planning the map around how to get to the goal. And it's exciting to focus on the goal. It's exciting to focus on the end result. That's where, everybody wants to be, but there's terrain you're going to have to go through, a mountain, a ravine you're going to have to cross to get to that. And if you don't plan ahead for that, it's going to be a trickier journey to the goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that just reminded me of like in trading. I think a lot of times, like when I was starting out, it was like, if I can make 10% every week, in 7 weeks, I'm doubling my money. But then I had to like shift my mindset where it's like the reality of that is not actually going to be what happens, and it's more of just like the process of going through the the tactics and the discipline to make these things work over and over around time. As opposed to just, like you said, the goal is always exciting. It's like, I could be twice as rich just so fast. But
exactly.
That's not.
It may or may not be, it may or may not happen. And for you to get caught up in, I think it would be easy then to get caught up in what's called the downward spiral of, I'm not good enough. I don't know what I'm doing. It's easy to start to go down, a really negative path. Whereas if you put the focus on the process, then it can be tweaked as you go. And it's not a statement against you as an individual. Whereas I think with some of these impractical goals people set for themselves, it becomes their sense of worthiness gets questioned because they couldn't do X or Y or Z. And it just sets you up. And the downward spiral and upward spiral, I learned in Landmark Education. Landmark Education is the course that jump-started me becoming a coach that I did about 15 to 17 years ago. I mean, I've coached 14 years. It was like 2 years before that, 16 years ago. And that course taught me that the way we speak really can either create possibility for ourselves or limit us and keep us stuck in a victim mentality. And one of the great talks that's out there online is a gentleman named Ben Zander. He's the conductor for the Boston Philharmonic, and he took Landmark, as did his wife, and they collaborated in a book called The Art of Possibility. And they talk about the downward spiral. And I'll give you an example of the downward spiral would be, let's say if I'm writing to a prospect and they don't respond to my email, my statement could be something to the effect of, this prospect is ignoring me. That would be a downward spiral when the truth of the matter is actually this prospect hasn't responded to email. But to put and couch it in the framework of they're ignoring me is taking me down. And even if I just speak it neutrally, this prospect isn't responding to me, that is not taking me down or necessarily up. But if I do want to be of the upward spiral, I could say, this client hasn't responded to me yet. And that leaves room for this sense. And it's not about being irrational or pie in the sky, but it's living in a place of possibility where anything is possible. And I really love that distinction because I think most of us have a tendency, for survival reasons, our brain is built this way, to focus on what could go wrong, what might be going wrong. But I think it can really get in our way sometimes from living in possibility and seeing what is potentially available to us.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This is something I had not totally been aware of until you kind of sent me a few of the clips with him and the way he speaks. And the one that I took that really spoke to me was when he was talking about giving all of his students A's. Like, you come into my class, you're an A student. But he says you have to write down what it is you will be at the end of this class that will have made you an A student. And that's so, right. And I think that's a really fascinating idea. It's just like writing to writing about your future self.
Correct.
Because then I think it does open up these the mind to the possibilities and what you really want, right? Like what you're, back to the kind of the goal oriented, but what you want your goals to look like. And then it's like, exactly. Oh, I see it now. Yes. How do I get there?
That's right. And or the unconscious. What's so amazing is that if we make a conscious choice to go in a specific direction, the unconscious sort of just begins to do a default setting to move us in that direction. So it is looking for, well, this is what this decision choice is going to be. How do we facilitate that happening? And the example I'm going to give is when I hadn't, let me just try to think. I'm trying to remember how far back it was. I worked for 10 years at Borders and Barnes & Noble. I was at Borders Books and Music at the time. And I think I had already maybe started to work in finance, but I was probably only, maybe I was 5 years, 6 years in. And a friend of mine sent out an email talking about going to St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And my mom had just passed away. I had, a lot of expenses that I was still paying off because of her care and the needs that she had, the expenses for the funeral. Like there was just so much financial pressure on me for so long. And this friend sent out this email saying she was going to St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands, who wanted to go with her. And boy, was I in need of a vacation. But I, was not financially in a position to say yes. But I can remember there was that thought process, and then something shifted in me, and I said to myself, I am going on this vacation. Like it was like probably 2 months away, but I was and I said, you know what? I'm going to put a stake in the ground and send an email to Maria and say, Maria, I'm going on this vacation. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet financially, but I'm going. And she said, Kim, do you know that I've already paid for the room? It was like an outdoor, ecological type of place. So it was like 8 beds in these like 2 gigantic rooms with walls of screen. It was like an outdoor kind of lodge. She's like, I've already paid for it. She's like, don't worry about the room cost. Just get yourself the money for the airfare. I was like, what? That is so generous. Oh my God, that's so nice of you. So I write to my other friend, Christine, and I say, Christine, I wrote to Maria telling her I was going to go on this trip. She just comped me the room. Now all I have to do is come up with the money for the airfare and spending money. And Christine says, Kim, I have so many frequent flyer miles. Don't worry about an airplane ticket. You've got that covered. Now just come up with spending money. Within less than literally like a half hour, an hour, I went from not being able to go on this trip and afford it to being able to go on this trip. And it ultimately, it facilitated my promise to the island. So of course I went. Now I didn't get to do like a lot of that water sports. I didn't get to do like jet skis or sail trips or snorkel excursions or blah, 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 or big fancy dinners at restaurants. But believe me, I was still having a great time. But, I knew I had to kind of do on the cheap side of the experience. And all these people did their thing. But when I left that island, I was on the plane. And before we took off, I made a promise to the island that I would be back on my own dime, first class, all the way in 1 year. And I was back on that island, first class, all the way, did all the water sports, did it all 1 year later. So wow. That is just like, and even that intention that day on the plane, right? So it's like, I really believe, and this is the most important lesson that I hope our viewers take away, create the intention and then watch life fall into place for you. Once I made a decision I was going on that vacation, yes, I have generous friends. Yes, I had really fortunate, people that care enough about me that would comp me that. But I truly believe part of what facilitated was my making a choice, putting a stake in the ground, and that opens up possibility that would never have happened without that decision. So choice.
Yeah, 100. That makes total sense. That's an awesome story.
Isn't it amazing?
But yeah, it makes total sense that you just, open your mind to the idea that it is possible, because you could have just as easily been like, I don't have the money, I'm not going to do it. And so you don't make those calls. You don't even try. Right.
Correct.
And then you just continue.
I felt because, and there's one guy that I love so much. He's the guy that does the Tut. Do you get the Tut emails? He's,
no, I don't think
what
so.
Is his name? I'll have to get his name, but I get the Tut emails it's a email from the universe that comes through every day, and he's sort of like the catalyst or the channeler of what the universe's message to us is. But he talks about the cursed house. He said most people get so caught up in that cursed house. How am I going to do that? That you talk yourself out of it consciously and unconsciously. So in that moment, lucky for me, I realized, oh gosh, I don't think I can afford this trip. I know I can't afford this trip. But then that concept would be me like, well, how am I going to afford this trip? And what he was saying was step into the place of what it is that you want. Step into the place of what you choose for yourself, and the hows work themselves out. And that to me is the best. That story is the best example of how I had no idea how, but I didn't let that stop me.
Yeah.
I didn't let that stop me. And the crazy part is that choice, in that moment about that vacation, on the other side of it, because I made that promise to the island, and I was, in finance, but I was making, let's say, an average salary. When I came back from that trip and made that promise to myself and the island that I'd be back on my own dime in 1 year, I figured out how much I would need for a first-class vacation to St. John. And it was a lot of money. And I thought, oh gosh, for me to be able to afford that, then in 1 year, the salary position I'm at is not going to cut it. So I'm going to have to get myself a much higher salary position. And that was when I put myself on monster.com. I even used my friend Christine's laptop because I didn't even have a computer at the time. And I clicked the highest bar I could around salary that Monster allowed at the time. It was, this is literally, what is it? Probably, 14. No, it's more than 14 years ago, maybe 20 plus years ago. It's a little archaic site. I clicked the highest salary possible. And again, I remember asking myself, that is not my current salary. Like how there was a part of me that was like, how am I going to answer this when they say, what is your current salary?
Yeah.
And you're asking for so much more. But again, I thought, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. And do you know, in the end, nobody ever asked me?
Oh. Yeah.
Nobody ever asked me that question. And so I went into my first interview, and that year when I went into the position and interviewed with two of the senior people, the headhunter, when I came out of the interview, said to me, they liked you so much, Kim, you could ask for more. And I was just like, more? I can't even wrap my head around this salary. Like, what? And that whole next year, they wound up hiring me. I wound up saying, how about a startup bonus? They gave me double everything that they agreed to. They doubled it because I kicked ass for them that year. No doubt about it. But the point is, I created an entire new life for myself because I stepped into the place of possibility over and over and over again. Didn't get caught up in the cursed house. And that changed my whole life. My whole life changed because of one decision on Avenue B and 14th Street when I said to myself, I'm going to St. John no matter how I make this work. So hopefully this story inspires everybody to really start to step into possibility. Where are you saying that where are you spending all your time on the house instead of stepping into the intention? So anyway, it's a long-winded story, Lucas. I'm sorry, but I just wanted to share that because I think it's the perfect, diving board of how my life started to go in a very different direction.
Yeah. Well, I think the story was worth hearing. And I also think one thing that it made me think of is as I was growing up, there was this big wave of the power of positivity movement,
Yeah.
Yes. And I don't really subscribe to that, but I do subscribe to the possibility movement, like that you're talking about. That makes way more sense to me. I believe that because it forces you, I guess, in a way to do the work around it. Because I feel like there's this maybe a myth, and maybe it's just my own perception of the power of positivity or whatever. Yeah. Where it's nice to like have positive thoughts, think positive things. But you also have to do the positive actions and do the work to get to the place that you want to be.
I would agree. And I feel like the positivity movement, and I remember years ago, I was very fortunate to have a mother who was pretty liberal in her spirituality, and religion, if you will. So I never grew up with like a hellfire and brimstone concept of God. And one of the guys that she was a huge follower of was Robert Schuller, who was a minister at the time. He was definitely one of the, kind of students of Norman Vincent Peale and the positivity. He was all about, positive thinking. And I believe some of when I think back to like his sermons or his teachings, he was talking about action, but I sense a little bit of like the New Age movement and like the incorporation of the positivity, even the law of attraction. And when people talk about that, they sort of don't include like you said, the action that has to take place, the concept of the operating as if. It feels as though a lot of, and I think people also become afraid of being with the heart to be with feelings. Like, there was still work and effort and fears that I had to step through in all of the choices I made during that time. And you can't like bypass, if you're going to be somebody who wants to be positive, doesn't mean you don't have pain, doesn't mean you don't have negative feelings, and you can't ignore those. I'm all about feeling those feelings, but it's, to say that my prospect is ignoring me and likewise to say my prospect can't wait to work with me, like that is misinformation. But to say they haven't responded yet leaves you with possibility. And that's the heart of what I think we're both in agreement on. It's like, how do you step into possibility? Are you or your saboteurs putting you down that downward spiral? And there is a talk we'll link to, which Ben Zander talks about, so here's the story that he references. I mean, it's not his story, it's a story, but the concept of two salesmen go to Africa to sell shoes. And the first salesman calls back to the home office and says, situation hopeless, they don't wear shoes. The second salesman calls back to the home office and says, glorious opportunity, they don't wear shoes yet. So those are two incredibly different perspectives on the same situation. One is from a downward spiral. Another one is coming from the upward spiral. And that's the place that ultimately we all have to ask ourselves every day, in our language, in the way we're approaching things, in the way we think about things. Are you coming from a place of an upward spiral or a downward one? And don't make yourself wrong if you're in the downward spiral, but get curious about what informs that.
Yeah, he also mentioned the thing that you talked about one time about like just when something doesn't go exactly how you think it will or how you react to something is just saying, oh, isn't that fascinating?
He's the one who taught me that. He's the one who taught me that catchphrase. I think that response is one where you're not going to a place of, oh shit, everything now has hit the fan. It's what, and there's another famous story. It's kind of like a little legend where I think the farmer's son's leg gets run over and everybody says, oh, this is terrible. And he says, we'll see. But then they wind up getting money from the other farm who's, crushed the guy's leg. And everybody's like, oh, this is such good news. And he's like, we'll see. Like throughout the whole story, there's the good and the bad. And everybody says this is great or this is bad. And he's in neutrality of like, there are repercussions to good things. There are repercussions to bad things. And don't necessarily put everything in one basket that it's all going to be terrible, all going to be great. And I also think I want to say this too. The way I stepped into finance was because I got fired from Borders Books and Music because of politics, because actually I had been sexually harassed by somebody and I stood up to them and I went to the corporate office and it didn't go so well. And so all of that, like I remember that day when I was fired, I had never been fired before and I was devastated. And I was also, taking care of my mother. So I was really scared because that was definitely helping to take care of her, that income. And yet, if I hadn't been fired, I never probably would have had the guts to go after the position that I ultimately did go after. I was kind of forced. The universe forced my hand. So there was a situation that I thought was just the worst thing that could happen to me. I can see now it was the best thing that could have happened to me. But we can't always see that in the moment.
Yeah. I think that's something we can bring back to just 2020 in general, and having maybe some gratitude around what has happened in the past year that at the time seemed terrifying. I mean, I know for myself, I had a couple different sources of income, and both of them basically dried up. Like, we're just getting cut and cut and cut. And I think I don't think I was unique in any way. I think that was probably a large percentage of the population out there. But, part of that happening ultimately led me to meeting you and us working together. And I think that's a great thing.
It is a great thing.
So, but maybe we can, maybe you can touch on what you were thinking of bringing up around 2020.
Yeah. This has been, it's been an interesting year because I have never been so busy, and I feel so grateful and fortunate that, things have gone so well for my business. And I feel so much empathy for so many people and friends and clients and colleagues who have not had that experience and that are really struggling. And just, I'm not a parent. I really feel for all the parents out there who are having to work full-time jobs, if they're lucky enough to have one, and then have to teach and educate their children, which I really think is a skill set. And not just a skill set, but like a level of patience and dedication. If anything, I think now maybe everybody will appreciate how important it is to pay teachers well, because it's a hard as hell job.
People are finally having some hands-on experience.
Yeah, they're like, how hard is it to raise Johnny? Really? You raise Johnny and teach him math and see how well it goes. So, there's and also doctors that are friends of mine, what they've gone through, and all the people at the front lines. So it's been this and also not being in New York, I've had some friends who are like, oh my gosh, you're in Hawaii. Did you know this was coming? And I'm like, oh God, no. But I have to say, there's many times where I just kind of thank God for my blessings that I'm not in a big city, because that would be really hard, especially New York. Even if you have a beautiful apartment, it's still small. And to be trapped inside, I think I would lose my mind. So I feel very grateful that I have been in Hawaii this time, in the midst of this whole thing. I feel like it's made me focus on all the things that are what my blessings are, what I'm, how I'm fortunate. And the places where there is disturbance, I just try to be a contribution as much as possible to the people that need it. And I try to, do that with different people that I've tried to take on to just be a contribution to them. I think it's a tricky year, but I also feel this sense of desire to see it be gone. Like there's a part of me that wants to see a new fresh start more than I've ever wanted a new fresh start before, just for the world, for the globe, for the United States. It just feels like there. And look, the market is in sync with my messaging, because it's just like all-time highs again today. Like there's a lot of positive vibes out there, I sense, as we go into the new year. Do you sense that too with the market?
Yeah, a little. I mean, right before we got on, it kind of started slipping quite a bit, but
did it? Oh,
yeah,
geez.
But we'll see what catches. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But I agree. It's last night it closed at all-time highs again. And I think there is a lot of promise that people are seeing around around the turning of the new year. And this goes back to it's just in my mind, I also feel this way. This is just my mindset in general, but around like birthdays, I don't totally love the idea of it being like a different day. For me personally, I understand that most people do, and I want to celebrate people. And this is maybe my own issue, but I like to have everything kind of be at least similar. And so that I don't, take too many days off for, mentally, but that's a whole other issue. So I think there is a lot of
that's a good point though. That's a good point. Like what it sounds like you like to have though is that sense of stability and neutrality, so that there isn't this great big height and then potentially a great big fall.
Yeah, that's probably it. that makes that's probably exactly it, actually.
Right? Like to be able to be somebody who's like in the center lane or in the middle, they call it the middle way in Buddhism, right? It's like not having too many highs, not having too many lows, taking them all with a grain of salt. I think that's, especially as a trader, I think that is the most critical piece of all. Don't get all, and the concept of the cursed house, like, look, you have to understand house when you're trading. You have to understand what's informing what you're about to do, in whether you're going long or short. You have to be connected to what the reasons are underneath it. But what you're speaking to is a mindset of not allowing the moments, the high or the low, dictate your response. That's what it sounds like to me. You're saying.
Correct. Exactly. But once again, this kind of also, I feel like ties into trading is I recognize that other people do, right? And so I recognize that. So that's one thing that I like to think about it, because that's the same thing we think we often traders we talked about is, is there news? Is there news on the day? Like, do you have a press release this morning? Because everybody's probably going to pile in. I know that it means virtually nothing unless it there's something actually happening. But if it's just a press release, it doesn't mean anything, but people are going to pile in regardless. And
Correct.
I guess that's, it brings, you have that skeptical eye, but I try not to be too skeptical about, I have a skeptical mind, but I try not to be overtly skeptical and try to find the flaws in everything. But just kind of see the good and the bad.
For sure. But also just your willingness to realize, okay, that maybe there is a press release that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but the fact that some people will think it does is still going to inform your wisdom around how and when you trade. Even if what is that concept about the irrationality, right? The market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent, right? Yeah. So even if they're being irrational, that still is going to impact your trading. So knowing that they potentially are going to respond irrationally is part of what helps you be rational. Even if it looks like you're mimicking, your motive is totally different than theirs. And that, I think, makes all the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's
all the difference.
Good thing to keep in mind. But
so the other thing too around Ben Zander that I did want to say was just that concept of the giving the A. Let's just talk about that a little bit, because that is giving people and yourself the benefit of the doubt. And there's a time and a place for that. But I think it is a really, it's a powerful perspective on life. In Landmark, Werner Erhard, who's the gentleman who created that course. It was called S back in the 70s, EST, and then it was transformed into Landmark. He said that human beings are meaning-making machines. We constantly create meaning. And what he says is, if you're going to create meaning, why would you create bad meaning? You might as well create good meaning that makes you feel good. Like, you're going to do it anyway. So you might as well do it where you feel better about yourself. And that's part of what, I think it takes some time to kind of wrap your head around. But the idea of like somebody, let's say, flying past me on the road, I can be like, that guy's a jerk, which is a story, right, that I'm creating in that moment. Or I could say, that guy's taking his wife to the hospital to give birth. Like, if one of those stories is going to be said to myself anyway, if I say that latter story, maybe I go into a good mood and I'm like, wow, a new baby's about to be born. I wonder what name they're going to come up with. It's like a gift of life, right? Like how sweet he's trying to get her there quickly. Like, you go down a whole nother path. And that's what he talks about giving the A. But of course, he talks about the giving the A too in the concept of living into it. He said, in that talk that, we both watch, he says, I only teach A students, So now he has an intention of what he expects out of his students, and his lens is going to impact, just like in Schrodinger's cat, in the scientific studies, the observer of whatever's happening impacts how what's happening is happening.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to remember all the time. We are impacting even the people around us. If we expect our, boyfriend or husband to leave socks in the living room, by God, he probably will. But if we expect him to clean up, or we begin to have the intention that he will have heard us say, please put them in the hamper, then we have a better chance at seeing that happen. So just don't discount the effect, the observer. There's a specific scientific name for the observer effect, but I can't remember it right now. So anyway.
Yeah, I completely on board with that. I think that holds true in just about anything in life. Like depending on how you approach any conversation is going to influence how that conversation goes, like innately. Yeah. And so
Absolutely.
I think there's no reason not to expect the best and approach it with the best intentions.
Exactly. And if you kind of pre-set your noticing, notice what are your expectations? Do you, if you're coming from this place of people are ignoring you, when you finally do get their attention, you're probably not going to be seen as too agreeable. You're probably going to be frustrated, angry, coming into the conversation negative. You're going to be looking for what's wrong. What's that other famous saying that says, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah, exactly.
So, ask yourself, are you a hammer? Are you always just looking for nails? Are you always looking for that which, speaks to your preconceived expectation? And are you in a position to start to switch up your expectations, and also the intention of just making a choice. Like in that first moment of me deciding I'm going to St. John, I put a stake in the ground. I didn't know how, but I said, this is going to happen. And then I opened myself up to possibility. Ask yourself, where is it that you could potentially step into possibility for yourself? Is there something that you really desire for yourself? Is there something you really hope to change for yourself in the new year? See if you can step into the choice of that before you get yourself all caught up in the how you're going to do that. Yeah. So that would be my suggestion to everybody as the clock strikes midnight on December 31st.
Exactly. Everything will be better.
Everything will be better. But define what better means and be as specific as possible. Like you want, I was like, I'm going to St. John. That was very specific. It wasn't like I'm going to go on a vacation. It was like all my intention poured into that situation. I was going to make that happen. And then when I made that promise to the island on the plane, I was like, I'm going to be able to afford. I was very specific. This opportunity to come back first class all the way, do all the water sports I want. Like I was unbelievably specific in both of those intentions. So even today, sometimes if I don't create what I want, I say, how specific was I? And I usually find I wasn't that specific.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I heard about this. This reminded me actually of something I heard years ago on the Tim Ferriss podcast. I forget who he had on. This is years ago, but somebody who, they had an assignment in a college class where they had to write, it's coming back to me. I think it was a designer, and they had to write where they saw themselves in 10 years. And they had to be 5 pages, and it had to be incredibly specific. And the more specific that people's were, like her and a few of her friends compared things. And the more specific they were, the more actual they became later on in life.
Wow, that is so cool. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because I really believe my understanding even of, I think it's maybe called the observer effect. Like there is this specificity that seems to be involved in the things that we create for ourselves. And I really think that is the unconscious. The unconscious is looking at everything from not how, but it's like, well, this is where we're going, so we have to make this happen. Yeah. And the more detail that's there, it becomes sort of already kind of set in stone in your imagination, in your intellect, in how you're viewing things. Because if that is definitely where you're going to go and what you're going to create, then everything starts to kind of move in that direction.
Yeah, it's almost like I don't know, seeing the peak of the tip of the mountain, but then starting to be, instead of just being like, it'd be nice to be on that peak of the mountain, you say, look, there's this path, and like the more specific you can be about the path, I think, puts you towards that.
Absolutely true. And I don't know if you ever read Wild by Cheryl Strayed.
Yeah.
Did you? So like, there's a gal who like is not advisable, but she was like, I am going to walk the Pacific Trail Highway. And she was woefully not prepared for it. And yet, damn it, she freaking did it. Even with her blistered out feet and inappropriately heavy knapsack. Like
her pack, yeah.
Everything about that was just, when you're reading that book, it's like a horror upon horror that this is not going to work. She's going to die in her attempt to do this. But she was so determined. It was all she had at that moment in time for herself emotionally that she could commit to, that she was like, she was no plan B. And, it's not the ideal way to go about it, I would say.
No.
But damn, she freaking did it. She freaking did it, and then wrote an amazing book about it, and that became a movie, and put her on the map in ways that I don't know would have any other way. Like, it's just that's a remarkable evidence of like even an insanely beyond the hows. And yet, if you guys haven't read the book Wild, oh my God, I read that book in 2 sittings. The first sitting was like an hour or 2. This next sitting, I read it for 8 hours straight. I think I got up, go to the bathroom, get some food, and I did not put it down. I could not put that book down. It was riveting.
I didn't read it that fast, but I remember first reading it on a plane from Reno, Nevada to LA. I remember, and I just read it the whole time, and it was like, wow, yeah, I'm not gonna stop reading this now.
Exactly. It's just one of those books that's just, oof. It was a game changer for me. It was a game changer.
Yeah, it's funny how I'm thinking about it. It's definitely, that was, like you said, all she had. Like she was at her wit's end with her life, basically.
She really was.
And so she became set to do this, and it was the determination, and just because it was all she has, which is not to be
it's not ideal.
It's
not ideal for sure.
But I think there's something there around discipline and determination. So,
absolutely. And around the fact that if you are coming from a place of no plan B, like it's always great to have plan Bs, but there's just going to be times in life where you're not going to have a plan B. And, it would be interesting. Like, there's a part of me that's like, I'd love to talk to all the people who have done what they've done. And I'm curious, like the ones who've really created something out of nothing, if are all of these people have in common the fact that they didn't have a plan B. I wonder. I mean, I've never had a plan B in my business. So.
I'll bet there's a pretty good majority of it. Yeah,
I bet too. So on one hand, I'm saying it's not good to have, but at the same time, I'm guilty of it. So I practice what I preach, but I have to say, I haven't practiced that. I have definitely not had a plan B. Go ahead.
I was thinking, this is something that you can speak to, but you, from what you've told me, and I think what I've heard you say in other podcasts is, you just felt like when you had a coach and then you got into coaching, it was like, this is it. Like there isn't anything else. And so I think sometimes that happens. You come across something in life and it's like, oh, this is it,
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely the truth. And this is part of why there wasn't a plan B, because I knew that this is what I was born to do. And I knew that, coaching, not bad podcast hosting, just to clarify for the listener, coaching is what I'm born to do. Yeah, I hope I can do podcasts too, but I'm born to do is definitely coaching.
This is fun, and it's a good way to get some of your ideas to the masses.
Exactly. But I mean, look, maybe for Joe Rogan, it is his bliss. Like maybe that's what he's born to do. I don't know, but I think for everybody, it's going to be unique. And for me, it's coaching. But you're right. When I found that, I didn't create a plan B because it was so all encompassing and so what I knew I was born to do, that I didn't feel the need to create a plan B.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have. I don't know.
No, I think you're doing great.
I don't know. Some days I question, like, am I crazy? Like, is it not really good advice that I have a plan B to myself, But okay. And the other movie that I wanted to speak to today was a movie I watched over the weekend, which is called Journeys to the Edge of Consciousness. And it features the stories and experiences of Aldous Huxley, Timothy Leary, and Alan Watts, and their use of hallucinogens. And how do you say it? Psilocybin, I think is how you say it, right? And,
apparently I'm the expert.
Yeah, you are now. I have just been fascinated with how much chatter that's been out there. And in fact, on the Steady Trade podcast this morning, we were talking about predictions for 2021. And I was asking the guys, what sector would hallucinogenics be? And they were both like, they're not so sure, because they kind of feel like pharma would keep, this from actually getting out there. So they were like, maybe it'll be its own sector. But I've just been really kind of curious, because I feel more than I've ever seen it before being talked about between Tim Ferriss's podcast. He's talked about it for years, though. And these kinds of movies. Like, I just feel people that normally aren't talking about hallucinogenics are talking about it. Gaber Matt is talked about it for a while. I'm reading his book, The Hungry Ghosts. So there's just so much out there about how these have the possibility to stop PTSD or certainly curb its effects, how to change addiction, shift addiction, just incredible stories that are just being talked about by people that never talked about this before. So I'm just kind of curious, your take on the hallucinogenic. And I'm also curious if you've ever taken a hallucinogenic.
No. But this is interesting. One of my friends, let me back up. So I sent you that podcast. It's a Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast. They did a 5-part breakdown of like hallucinogenics over the past 70 years or so, and some of the science behind it and how it was being really studied in the 50s and into the 60s. And then the war on drugs, everything just completely shut it down. And now it's like really difficult to study in the United States, but there has been some studying happening recently, and Oregon just passed the vote was decided that mushrooms will be legal in Oregon. Wow. I'm not sure if you heard about that.
I didn't. I'm so happy to hear that. I mean, I heard the decriminalization potentially of weed, and I feel like, the concept that this may be part of that journey. We're moving towards the decriminalization of all drugs is what I'm hoping.
Which, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm all on board with that. I don't, as long as you are not hurting other people, I don't care what you do.
Absolutely. Tax the hell out of it, man.
Exactly.
That'll just take all of our financial, let healthcare be paid for, the tax on hallucinogens and weed, and we're good to go. Everybody's got healthcare. It's not rocket science,
Yeah. But in this podcast, they talk about a lot about, like you said, curbing some of the PTSD. And also just shifting consciousness, kind of like you talked about, just in general for the layperson, as long as they're really clear about set and setting, and that's where you are, who you're with, a comfortable place, and going in with an intention to why you're doing this, not just really recreationally.
Correct.
And one of the hosts talks a lot about it, he had experienced it, in it when he was 18 or 20 or something like that, and he was like, now as an adult, I wish I had those intentions going in then and realized he was had profound experiences, but also felt like he could have gotten so much more and may in the future. And this is a funny short story. One of my friends recently was telling me about an experience on mushrooms that he had not too long ago. And he was saying, I won't say his name because I don't want to out him, but he was saying that it really was pretty mind opening for him, because he just did it in a safe place by himself. And he was just having had this 3-hour conversation with himself, and then just in his mind became this like little interior decorator and came through his like, and was like, you don't need this. You don't need this. Let's put this over there. Let's put this right here in the front so we can see it. And he was like, and he's like, I don't want to say his personality's changed because it hasn't, but he's like in this much better state of mind where he's just like more grounded. It was pretty fascinating to not see him for like 6 months, partially because of COVID, and then see him, and it was like, you do seem like something has changed.
That is so fascinating. I love that story. I'm so happy for him and that it was such a good trip. I mean, I think that's the concern, is that the trips aren't always going to be good. You know, the trips can be complex, especially if there's some trauma within yourself that you haven't dealt with or addressed. And that's why I think it's so important to have somebody really facilitate the experience with you, so that if that happens and a bad trip goes down, somebody's there to kind of help care for you and help you get yourself through to the other side. So I, would not be a fan of doing it by yourself, but I'm glad he had a good experience for sure. How about yourself? Have you ever done a hallucinogenic? No. Okay. No. Okay. Do you have the desire to?
Maybe someday. It would be interesting. After listening to that podcast, it was like really, it was pretty open, like eye-opening around the idea of just like pulling back some of the layers of consciousness and just like kind of peeking in and seeing. But yeah, for sure. I'm curious, I guess just to anybody listening or watching this, proceed with a lot of caution, and also like just the legality of it right now in our country. Like, it's just not legal. So you got to really protect yourself. And if you do go to another country, you just want to do a lot of vetting. I've had really good friends go, to do an ayahuasca experience in Peru. And, they did a lot of research into where they were going, who they were going to be there with, how clean things were going to be. And this was pre-COVID, obviously, but just to make sure that there were people there who really knew what they were doing. This was a shaman who had done it for many, many years that they went and visited. So they felt they were going to be really held and have intention around it, and also have backup if, God forbid, anything goes wrong. So just be careful, use wisdom, and don't do it. Don't DIY this. This is not a DIY, in my opinion. I don't think so either. I think you got to be. That's why I feel like I've done quite a bit of work around my consciousness in general, and so I don't totally feel the necessity to dive in headfirst into drugs, But also be on the lookout for like a couple. What was it, last week? There was after that vote got passed, like this OTC. It was called Psych, PSYC. They're like into hallucinogenics, and they had a little run from, I think, like a 0.1% of 1 penny to I think they went up to 4 cents. So.
Wow. Interesting. And are they facilitating experiences for people?
No, I don't think so. I think they're just going to, they're just in the market of creating just hallucinogenics, growing mushrooms, I think. I'm not even.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. That's interesting.
I didn't research them that much. I just saw that they
cool.
were
I'm going to look them up now because, I'm getting my training platform already, my monitor. So I'm going to look at that one because I said to them, like, if there's one thing I would go long on right now, it would be hallucinogenics, mushrooms, and that, because I just feel that the decriminalization of all of these are finally, thank God, dissipating. Yeah. They're just, it's just been so crazy. And I really feel it's because it's so effective and so powerful and can be used to treat so many things that's part of what's kept them being kind of demonized, because a lot of people are making money on us. As certainly consumerism, like, if you have this, like if we get to a place where we wake up from this consumerist brainwashing and or big pharma, like we have so much possibility, and a whole bunch of people who are making money off us now won't be making money off us anymore. Yeah.
There's a reason why pharmaceutical companies have like the biggest lobbyists in Washington.
Exactly.
And alcohol and tobacco. Think about it.
Exactly. Think about it, people.
I don't want this to turn into one of those conspiracy podcasts where they're like, they're trying to keep you down, but also
they're trying to keep you down. They're trying to keep you down.
Keeping you sedated and keeping you buying crap.
Right. That's right. Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
That's kind of what runs America. So they're just trying to keep the dollar up.
Yep, for sure. So yeah, anyway. But this is a great documentary, even though it's just an overview of each of their experiences back in the 50s, 60s, when they first had their, exposure to it. And to just hear each man in his voice speak about what happened to him while he was, in that experience, it was just really quite fascinating and allows you to get a window into it, without needing to take one. So anyway.
Yeah, I think it's pretty eye-opening to just hear people talk about their experience and be like, oh, interesting,
Yeah.
So
it's all there's just a lot of, even Stephen Johnson talked about the mushroom shake he had in Thailand, and he said, he always thought spirituality was such a joke, and then he said, I took a mushroom shake and the joke was on me, and I was like, whoa, holy mackerel, what is available if my eyes were only open before,
Yeah. Anyway, want to wrap it up with a couple of maybe some more talk about intentions around 2021.
Yes. Let's do it. So
intentions. Invest in psychedelics.
Exactly. That's my intention.
Maybe not yet. They will definitely have some runs, though.
They are definitely going to have some runs. I have no doubt about that. All right. So I think my intentions for this year, well, there's, a little bit of a competition happening between Tim and Stephen around the rowing machine. So because I'm a paddler, I'm kind of like a little bit wanting to create an intention that I lost about 10 pounds in the last, 6 months or so. I want to lose probably another 20 pounds. That's definitely an intention of mine because I want to potentially compete against them. I know it's a long shot that I'll never really beat them, but it would be really fun. It would be really fun to beat them both of them because they're both so sure of themselves.
I would love it. I would love if you beat
They probably both would hate me if I beat them both of them, but it'd be fun trying. And I'm looking at a one-man canoe. And Tim was funny today. He's like, Kim, a one-man canoe? He's like, shouldn't that be a one-woman canoe? I was like, good point.
Person. I think we call it person canoes.
Yeah, person canoe, one person canoe. So I'm looking hopefully at a one-man canoe that I'm going to get, and then I can practice more. So my intention is to lose a little bit more weight and to get in better shape and just be out on the ocean more because I've been working around the clock. So yeah, and then my intention just around what I want to create by way of work for my company and for my business is to be able to offer classes to the traders, around mindset and emotional intelligence and how to stay, in a place of neutrality. So that's my intention as well. And to have more fun, to just have more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's mine. How about yours?
Oh man, I honestly didn't think about it. So, I don't know. I guess I'll have to start giving it some thought because I haven't thought about it. Mine, I guess the things I'm working on right now are getting. So, but before everything shut down, I used to go to the gym pretty often, but then it got shut down, and so I feel like physical fitness is the easy one for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So, because working out at home is a lot harder, but I have a park that I go to down the street.
Good. That's great.
So as long as parks stay open, I will happily get out in the fresh air, run around, jump around.
That's good. Yeah. All right. So we'll circle back for you to create some intentions.
Yeah, I guess so.
Powerful. Yeah. Because we don't want you to just, spitball a few intentions now. I want you to have real clarity about what you're going to create for yourself. And then we can check in to see how we're doing as we go through this.
Yeah, because we're recording it. We have it, we have it documented.
Right. That's right. Today's December 9th, 2020, people. So you can hold us accountable to our intentions. Yeah. And that's what I'll ask the viewers to do is create your intentions. Maybe if you're comfortable, share your intentions with us in the YouTube comments. or just send us what your intentions are. I do think when we create intentions, having somebody help hold us accountable to them or speaking them out loud, I do think makes a big difference. So find somebody that you can share them with who can share theirs with you, and you can just buddy up and hold each other accountable to the intentions you're both creating for yourself.
Yeah. And if you're a new trader, make the intention of honoring your stops, because it prevents you from getting hit by the bus.
Exactly. That is a great intention for every trader, is be true to your stops. I've got my worksheets printed up from Stocks to Trade. So I'm very excited. I've got my long worksheet. I've got my short worksheet. I've got my trade journal. So I'm very excited to get myself going here. So I have no doubt I will have so many stops. I will be the queen of stops, because I can see all the people that have come to me that have not honored their stops. That is not who I want to be in that game.
And if you're having trouble honoring your stops, ask yourself why.
Exactly. Ask yourself, what is going on? What is stopping me from being a man or woman of my word? Yeah. That's the heart of the matter.
And then the real work starts.
That's right. Absolutely true. All right. So we'll close it up there, I guess, Lucas.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Wishing you and yours a beautiful 2021. What a year 2020 has been. I don't really think anybody is sad to say goodbye to it. So may your intentions be crystal clear and detailed. And may we all have a less volatile year next year, but lots of joy and abundance for everybody, and health.
All right. Thanks, Kim. This has been great.
Thank you, Lucas.
This has been the Wall Street Coach Podcast with Kim Ann Curtin. You can find out more about her and her team online at thewallstreetcoach.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes. Thank you for listening.